والأولان منع الوطأ إلى غسل والآخران قرآنا جلا والكل مسجدا وسهل الاغتسال مثل وضوئك ولم تعد موال.
نعم. موجبات الغسل يعني أسباب الغسل. حيض، إذا انقطع الحيض عن المرأة وجب عليها الغسل. نفاس، كذلك إذا انقطع النفاس عن المرأة وهو دم الولادة. إنزال، كذلك إذا خرج المني من الرجل أو المرأة يجب عليه الغسل بلذة معتادة. مغيب كمرة، كذلك إذا غيب بالغ فرجه في فرج وجب عليه الغسل. كذلك الموطوءة إذا كانت بالغة يجب عليها الغسل. إسجال في فرج، سواء كان ذلك الفرج آدميا أو غير آدميا، سواء كان ذلك التغييب مباحا أم لا. والأولان منع الوطأ إلى غسل والآخران قرآن جلاء. والأولان منع الوطأ، الأولان يعني النفاس والحيض، هذان يمنعان الوطأ، يمنعان الزوجة من أن يطأ زوجته إلى غسل، إلى أن تغتسل أو يحصل له ضرر طويل بحيث لو لم تغتسل من انقطع عنها الحيض والنفاس، ولكنها لو لم تغتسل بإن كانت مريضة وما وجدت الماء صار يحصل له مثلا ضرر بذلك، يجوز له ذلك بالتيمم. والآخران قرآن جلاء يعني الإنزال والجماع، هذان يمنعان القرآن حتى يغتسل.
So on the bottom of page 19, the things that which necessitates ghusl. So ghusl is required after menstruation, postpartum bleeding, orgasm, and penetration of the glands in any private part. So once a woman goes through a menstrual cycle and the blood stops, and he's going to discuss what exactly when the menstruation is over. Once it stops, then she has to do a ghusl. Also, the postpartum bleeding that's associated to childbirth. It could come out. It could start before the actual childbirth begins, and then after the child is born, it could go up to 60 days. So once that bleeding stops, then she's required to do a ghusl. Also, orgasm. Those first two are particular to women. The orgasm is either the man or the woman. If either the man or the woman experience orgasm, and there's for the man orgasm with the ejaculation of fluid, and for the man the orgasm even if there's no ejaculation of fluid, and for the woman there has to be ejaculation of fluid. So once that occurs, whether it's in a waking state or asleep, the person would have to do a ghusl. Also, the penetration of the glands, the tip of the male organ in any private part, if that occurs, it necessitates a ghusl both on the man and on the woman. Men do not. The first two render intercourse prohibited until ghusl is performed. So now at the top of page 20, and it is performed. And the second two prevent one from the recitation of Quran, which has such a sweetness. So the first two, which is menstruation and the postpartum bleeding, the hayd and the nifas, render intercourse prohibited. So it's haram for a man to have intercourse with his wife during the menstrual period and also during the postpartum bleeding period. And it also the prohibition continues even after the blood is cut off until they do a ghusl. So even if the blood is cut off and she has not performed the ghusl yet, it's still prohibited for him to have relations with her. And the second two prevent one from the recitation of the Quran. So if there's the orgasm and the penetration of the glands, if that happens, then the person is prohibited. Then that person is prohibited from reciting the Quran. However, all of the above mentioned prevent one from entering a masjid. So all four of those categories, if a person's in that state and has not performed the ghusl yet, then they cannot enter into a masjid. If something is forgotten,
والكل مسجدا وسوء الاغتسال من الوضوء كان تيمم. والكل من هؤلاء الأربعة يمنع مسجدا وسوء الاغتسال مثل وضوءك. إذا نسي الإنسان شيئا من غسله، عضوا فرضا من غسله مثل الوضوء، فيجب عليه أن يبادره عندما يذكره، ولكن لا فرق بين الطول والقرب، فلا يعيد ما بعده ولم يعيد ما والاه يعني ما بعده.
So all four are prevented from entering in a masjid. Then if something is forgotten during the ghusl, like if a limb of the ghusl is forgotten, then treat it as you would do your wudu, except you need not repeat what was already performed. So just like in the wudu, if you're doing wudu and you forget an obligation, you go back to perform that obligation, and then in the wudu you do what's after it. So if you were washing your feet and you forgot to have washed your arm, you go back, wash your arm, and then you do everything else. But in the ghusl, it's the same in the sense that you, as soon as you remember the obligation, you go back to that particular obligation. But it's different from the wudu in that you do not repeat what's after it.
Would you have to repeat any prayers that you may have completed until the time that you did?
So just like in wudu, if a person had prayed with this incomplete ghusl, you would have to repeat any of those prayers after completing the ghusl. So whether, and also we said in the wudu, there's a difference if you remembered it during the wudu or close by, you go back to that part and you repeat what's after it. And if a long time passed, you just do that limb. Whereas in ghusl, whether it's during the ghusl, near, after it, or a long time, you just go back to repeat that particular limb. نعم قلت عن إذا المرأة ما وجدت الماء وحصل
الزوج الضرر
تتيمم.
هي فقط صارت مثلا هي تتيمم صارت للفرد، لكن هو صار يجوز له أطوها من غير غاسل.
نعم.
لأنه إذا كان يحصل له ضرر بالانتظار، كان يحدث له مرض ويحصل طول شديد ويخاف على نفسه الزنا، يجوز له أن يجامع.
So also going back to where it says the first two, meaning the first two render intercourse prohibited, both menstrual bleeding and the postpartum bleeding, the nifas. It says that it's prohibited until the ghusl is performed, but in the situation where a woman does not have water, so she cannot immediately perform a ghusl, and by leaving intercourse that could cause harm to the man, he may fear committing the haram, may fear zina, then in that case he can have relations with her even if she has not performed her ghusl yet. There's two narrations. Sometimes it's in some books you find hala, and some you find it jala, and they both have they just change the meaning. They change the meaning of the Quran. So if you read it with jala, it would be the two prevent one from the recitation of the majestic Quran, and if you read it hala, it's recitation of Quran which has such a sweetness. So if a woman cannot find water, and so that's going to delay her ghusl after the cutting off of blood from the menstrual bleeding or the postpartum bleeding, and the husband thinks that by delaying intercourse with her, that's going to cause him harm, like for example, he thinks that if he does not have intercourse with her, he's going to do the haram, then he could go ahead and have intercourse with her after the blood cuts off and before she does ghusl. No, she doesn't have to do tayammum. فصل في التيمم. So are there any questions on the ghusl before we go on to tayammum?
Yeah, in the same aspect. If you don't have the water to do ghusl, and you need to perform your prayer, you have enough water to make wudu, you would go ahead and make wudu, perform your prayer. Would you hold out throughout the rest of your prayer until you found
You need to do ghusl?
Yeah.
What is it? And you only have enough water for wudu?
Exactly.
If you need to do ghusl and you only have enough water for wudu, then you do tayammum for the prayer. Because tayammum is a complete purification, and wudu for a person in janab would be a deficient, incomplete purification. فصل في التيمم. فصل لخوف ضر أو عدم ماء عوض من الطهارة التيمم وصلي فرضا واحدا وإن تصل جنازة وسنة به تحل.
نعم. فصل التيمم. التيمم في اللغة القصد، لذا قال تعالى ولا تيمموا الخبيث منه تنفقون، إلا تقصدوا الخبيث منه تنفقون. وفي الشرع طهارة ترابية يبيحها خوف ضر إذا خاف الإنسان ضررا. ذلك الضرر متفاوت، أحيانا يكون يخاف على نفسه شديد أذى أو هلاك، فهذا يجب عليه التيمم. إذا كان يخاف ضررا يعني مرضا أو زيادة وتأخر ولكن لا يؤديه لشديد أذى كصمم أو عمى أو آلام شديدة أو موت هذا فقط يكون جائز التيمم لكن لا يؤدي لضرر شديد. أو كان يعدم ماء ما يجد ماء يكفي أعضاءه الواجبة، فلو كان يجد ما يكفي أعضاءه الواجبة يجب عليه أن يترك السنن والأنداب ويقتصر على الواجبات. عوض من الطهارة التيمم، اجعل التيمم بدلا من الطهارة المائية. وصلي فرضا واحدا، لا يجوز بالتيمم الواحد أن يصلي الإنسان به فرضين على المشهور من المذهب المالكي. وإن تصل جنازة وسنة به، إذا وصلت جنازة بتيممك للفرض بأن لم يطل ما بين الجنازة وانتهائك من الفرض بحيث يحصل شفاف أعضاء من زمن اعتدل أو قدر المعقبات على ما حده بعضهم، لكن المشهور لا حد بذلك بالعادة، أي يجوز لك أن تتبعه الجنازة إذا لم يحصل طول. وكذلك السنة أو المندوبات.
So this is the section on tayammum. And the word tayammum in Arabic means to intend something. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, using the word tayammumu, do not intend the foul things when you give out charity. Do not give from your wealth. Don't give the foul things. And in the terminology, the way that's used in the Sharia, it means a purification that's attained through use of pure earth. So the section, for fear of harm or lack of water, simply replace wudu with earth ablution, tayammum. So if a person fears harm, and that harm is either, say for example, there's water there, but in going to the water there's bandits or there's wild animals, so he could be harmed. Or there's a lack of water. He doesn't have any water at all. Or a person's sick, so he has water, he can use it, but he's sick, and by using this water, it's going to increase his sickness or delay the healing. So as far as sickness, it's one of three things. Either the person's healthy, but he knows that by using the water, it's going to make him sick. So this is fear of sickness. The second one is the increase an already present sickness. Or three, to delay the healing of a present sickness. So if he fears one of those three things, then it's permissible for him to replace wudu with tayammum. Now, if he fears that if he goes ahead and uses the water, it's going to cause him great harm, like it's going to cause him to get blind or lose any of his faculties, his hearing or his speech, then it becomes incumbent, it becomes wajib for him to do tayammum, because he cannot harm himself to that degree. If it would cause him to get sick, but it's not going to be a great sickness, then tayammum is merely permissible. So he can do wudu and go ahead and get sick, or he could do tayammum and leave the sickness. So then he would replace wudu with the earth ablution with the tayammum. So the second and the third, the first one was fearing the person's healthy and he fears getting sick. The second one is that he's sick, but he fears an increase of a present sickness. And the third one is the delay of the healing. So if the sickness, if using water would cause the person to get sick, but it's not going to be great, then it's permissible for him to do tayammum. Like say he's going to get a cold or he's going to get a slight flu or something like that, then it's permissible for him to do tayammum. But if he does wudu, there's no harm in that. And if it's going to cause him great harm, then it would be haram for him to use water, and it would be an obligation for him to do tayammum.
إذا كان مرض عادي، شو هو المشاق، الشرع كثير منه جعل الله فيه مشاق كالصوم وكالطهارة. كون الإنسان لا يرى بردا، كونه لا يشتد عليه الحر في الصوم، هذا منوط بالعبادات. أشياء من المشاق لا تنفك عن العبادات، كوجود برد وكوجود حرارة وكوجود مشقة في الصوم، فهذا لازم. لكن وجود ضرر له بال كزيادة مرض وتأخر برن وأشياء كان لها بال، هذا إذا كان الإنسان قوي البال ومعناها ما تؤثر عليه هذه الأمور، لو تورع ما فيها حرج. ولكن لو ترك أيضا الوضوء وما حمل نفسه المشقة يعني بالمرض الخفيف، هذا له ذلك.
فيكون على حسب الحال.
على حسب حال الإنسان وليس من الورع ترك التيمم ليس من الورع بل إلا إذا فعل الإنسان ذلك كان يخاف على نفسه أن يكون مقصرا في الأمور يحمل نفسه على المكاره فهذا وجه وليس قال زروق ليس من الورع ترك التيمم ليس من الورع إذا كان يباح.
So the question was asked because we said that that if a person does not fear great harm by doing wudu, would it be better for him to do wudu and get slightly sick or to do tayammum? And so he said it's going to depend on the situation. If a person is strong and he knows that even if he does wudu and he gets sick, it's not going to affect him. It's not going to affect his worship, like decreases worship. It's not going to affect his mental state. Then it's fine for him to do tayammum. And if a person sees that it's going to, even that slight sickness is going to create a hardship, and it could decrease the amount, say if he's studying, or if a person's doing worship, it's going to decrease the worship, then tayammum is okay for him. And he said, Sidi Ahmed Zarruq said that it's not from wara', it's not from like a scrupulousness, like leaving the doubtful matters. Don't consider that leaving tayammum is from wara'. Like that it's a doubtful matter. If a person has the ability to do tayammum or the right to do tayammum, he should go ahead and do it. So he said there's it's not like that one is better than the other. It's going to depend on the situation, because a person could say get slightly sick, but that affects his studies, that affects he's not going to be able to pray as much nafilah, he's not going to do as much things. So then for that person he should have just done tayammum. And if a person that's not going to affect his state, then he can do wudu if he wishes. He's going to talk about it. And then just as a note, also when we say like a fear of sickness or a fear of increase in sickness or already present, what is that? Like how do you determine that? Because some people might just be very weak, and then everything if you get like a slight a runny nose by doing wudu, they'll jump to tayammum. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about like a sickness, like a cold or a flu, and that's determined by one of three things. By prior experience, tajriba, by khabar tabib arif, like a doctor, an experienced doctor that says, look, if you do wudu in this situation, you're going to get sick. Or khabar yuwafiq al-mizaj.
لكن نادر الوجود مزاجك إذا كان نادر قياس.
ولكن إذا وجده
لا ما يجدون مثلا نادر قياس إلا إذا كانت توازن طبيات وأشياء هذا صعب جدا ممكن تقولون لكن تبين لهم بعده.
نعم.
لكن تبين لهم من حقيقته مثلا الأغلب فيها مجهولة.
نعم. So either you experience, from personal experience that water would harm you in this situation, either wudu or ghusl. Or a doctor tells you, or somebody who has a similar body makeup to you, like you're a male, he's a male. If you're Arab or African American, you're same age, from the same country, raised in the same things, everything's pretty much the same. And he tells you, look, I know in that situation I got sick by doing wudu, and if you do wudu, you're going to get sick. But he said that's very rare to find almost an exact match of you and an exact match situation. So that's very rare. If the situation occurs, the person could judge based on that. But he said it's very rare that occurs.
Well, judging it on your own, like for example.
That's personal experience.
Okay. What about if someone who's not similar, but they go, that water over there made me sick?
No, if it's somebody that's not similar, or if it's a person that's not really a doctor, or it's just what's it like? Oh, I think I might get sick, or then you do wudu. And if a person were to do tayammum, it would be invalid.
Yeah, but what if someone warns you about the water in a stream or a well as being bad?
وإذا واحد مثلا كأنه أتى وقال هذا الماء مثلا فيه ضرر من ناحية ذات الماء فيه سم أو فيه مثلا
هذا
كأنه واحد مثلا
واحد كيف واحد طبيب أو آلة كشفت هذا إذا كانت آلات كشفتها محققة ما يجوز للإنسان يدخل نفسه الهلاك. لأن هذا كالمعدوم إذا كان فقط وساوس ترك ماء بلدة لكونه وسوس الضرر من السيد عبد الله بن حاج رحمه هذا من وساوس الشيطانيات.
He said, so the question was asked, if a person comes to water and somebody tells him this water has harm in it, for whatever, there's a disease in it, or there's pollution or whatever it may be, can a person do tayammum in that situation? He says, who's telling him? If it's a person like a scientist and they've tested this water, or somebody that's not a scientist but he has a tool that can test this water and is pretty sure, then he said yes, you base your judgment, you make a judgment based on that, because it's not permissible for a person to cause himself to get sick. Then, but he said if it's just somebody telling him and they don't know the situation, then it's not permissible. It's not permissible because that's almost, or if he just makes his own judgment, so like says, that would be considered waswasa. And Sidi Abdullah, one of the famous Mauritanian scholars, he said that it's not permissible for a person to leave water of an area because of waswasa, thinking of like whisperings or like just excessive doubt about that water, thinking that it might be harmful. Brick in the door.
And you can't tell without asking. And a lot of times the local people have knowledge because they found dead stock there.
Well, if the local, that's what he's saying. If it's a person that has, don't open it all the way, Sulaiman, just like right in the doorway, yeah. If it's a person, that's a person like of the Ahl al-Ma'rifah, the people of knowledge. So you ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. So if those people, sometimes those people have more knowledge than somebody that came out with a PhD in that particular science. Like he's in a hospital? Well, if it just depends on the situation. If water is going to harm him, then yes, it would be permissible. But wudu is hard for them? Okay, well that would probably cause harm. That would be like if you have, because the doctors are probably going to tell them don't get this area wet. Like if the IV is, especially if it's right there on the hand, or on the arm, you have to ask the doctors, would that be problematic if it got wet? And if he says, well, we're not going to, if you can wash the rest of the limb and wipe that area, just wipe it with water, then you would have to do that. Only pray one obligatory prayer with it, meaning with the tayammum. But if a funeral prayer or sunnah prayer immediately follows, then it is permissible to use the same tayammum. So if a person does tayammum, they can only pray, according to the dominant opinion of the Maliki madhab, you can only pray one fard prayer with the tayammum. So if you're praying two back to back, you have to make a specific tayammum for each prayer. Then if a funeral prayer or sunnah prayer immediately follows after that prayer done with tayammum, then it's permissible to pray it. So you pray dhuhr, for example, with tayammum, and then right after it there's a sunnah prayer, or there's a nafila prayer, or there's a janazah prayer. You can pray using the same tayammum as long as it followed immediately. There was no long space of time. And they give different definitions to a long space of time. Some say it's the amount of time to recite the 33, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. Some say the time it would take to dry your limbs in normal conditions. And some say just whatever the custom determines. Like, would you consider that a long time or a short time? وجاز للنفل ابتداء ويستبيح الفرض للجمعة حاضر صحيح.
نعم. جاز للنفل ابتداء فاقد الماء يعني المسافر أو الشخص المريض جائز له أن يتيمم للنافلة ابتداء سواء كانت النافلة سنة أو ندبا، ويستبيح الفرض. نية تيمم وإن يريد استباحة ما منع عليه من فرض أو مس مصحف أو طواف، أو ينوي الفرض، فإذا نوى الفرض نوى أن هذا فعل واجب عليه هذا يكفيه. فإذا كان عليه حدث أكبر وجب عليه أن يبين استباحة الصلاة مما هو عليه، ينوي استباحتها من الحدث الأكبر الذي هو عليه، فما يمكن أن يقول استباحة الصلاة فقط. للجمعة حاضر صحيح، لا يجوز لفاقد الماء الصحيح الحاضر أن يتيمم للجمعة إذا كان يجد الماء قبل أن يخرج وقت الظهر. أما إذا كان لا يجد الماء إلا بعد أن يخرج وقت الظهر فالصحيح أنه يتيمم للجمعة لا فائدة في تأخيره فسيصلي الظهر وهو متيمم إذا كان يجد الماء في وقت الظهر. أما إذا كان مثلا ما يجد الماء في وقت الظهر فسيصلي الظهر بتيمم منها لا فائدة ما في فرق بين الأمرين.
It is permissible to perform tayammum for a nafila independent of the obligatory prayer for both a sick person and a traveler. So just to begin with, a person doing tayammum is either sick, like he's doing tayammum because of what we previously discussed, because he fears that using the water, fears that the water would harm him. So he's either a sick person, a traveler, he's doing tayammum while traveling, either because he's sick or because he can't find water while traveling, or a person's a healthy resident. And he's doing tayammum because he cannot find water. So if it's the sick person or the traveler, it is permissible to perform tayammum for a nafila prayer independent of the obligatory prayers. So we just previously mentioned that you could do an obligatory prayer with tayammum and then immediately after pray nafila or sunnah or a janazah prayer. But if it was a nafila prayer, say just by itself, a person wanted to pray a duha prayer or the greeting prayer of the masjid or tarawih or whatever it is, and he doesn't have an obligatory prayer before that thing, then he can do tayammum specifically for that nafila if he was a sick person or a traveler. However, it only makes an obligatory prayer except Jum'ah valid if he is a healthy resident. If a person's a healthy resident, he cannot pray, he cannot do tayammum specifically for nafila. He can only do it specifically for an obligatory prayer, except for Jum'ah. Except for Jum'ah. So in the case of Jum'ah, even though Jum'ah is an obligatory prayer on free adult males, if a person does not find any water, so he can do tayammum because he cannot find water, and it's Jum'ah time. He leaves Jum'ah and prays Dhuhr later. That's if he thinks that later in the Dhuhr time he's going to find water. So then it becomes incumbent upon him to leave praying Jum'ah with tayammum and wait to pray Dhuhr with wudu. Whereas if he knows that he's not going to find wudu during the entire time of Dhuhr, then he goes ahead and prays Jum'ah with tayammum, because he's either going to pray Jum'ah with tayammum or Dhuhr with tayammum. So he prays Jum'ah with tayammum. Na'am. So we said that the only thing that a healthy resident can do a tayammum for is an obligatory prayer, except for Jum'ah. Jum'ah he cannot do tayammum for. But that's conditional. The condition there is if he knows that later during the time of Dhuhr he will find water. Whereas if he knows that he will not find water in the time of Dhuhr, he does tayammum for Jum'ah. So it's either he knows he can do tayammum for Jum'ah or delay the prayer and pray Dhuhr with water, with wudu. Or he prays Jum'ah with tayammum now, or he delays it and he prays Dhuhr with tayammum later, because he can't find water in the rest of the time of Dhuhr. So in the situation where he cannot find water, he's either going to pray Jum'ah with tayammum or Dhuhr with tayammum. He does tayammum for Jum'ah. And the situation where he's going to have to delay and pray Dhuhr with wudu, then he leaves the Jum'ah. What's that? What do you mean first time or second time? Oh, it's Mukhtar time. Mukhtar, the elective time, the preferred time.
So if you...
What was your question? Okay.
If you can't find water and it's Jum'ah time, but you know you can find water later, then don't pray Jum'ah.
Then don't pray Jum'ah with tayammum and pray Dhuhr with wudu.
So don't pray Jum'ah at all and just wait till you make it with water.
Right. No, because you can't be in the masjid when the imam's praying and you're not praying, because that in any situation as well. If you're inside a masjid and the regular imam gives the establishes the prayer, the iqamah, it's either you're in the prayer or you leave the masjid. And if you have not already prayed that prayer, you cannot leave the masjid. Once you go into the masjid and the iqamah is given, you have to stay, and that's all to prevent people from thinking that you have a problem with the imam. So if you're in the prayer in the masjid and a person's praying, a regular imam, and the regular imam is a person that gives adhan and iqamah for the majority of the daily prayers. Yeah, any place. So even if it's at his house, if a person gives adhan and iqamah at his house, if you go to his place where he's praying inside his house and he gives iqamah, you either pray, or if you've already previously prayed, you excuse yourself from that area. With tayammum? and he knows that he can find wudu later in the time? If he does find it? Oh, if he finds water after, well, he's going to talk about that. If a person does tayammum and he finds water later. وما إذا واحد كان يعرف أنه سيجد الماء في وقت الظهر ولكن قدم وصلى الجمعة بالتيمم. هل الصلاة باطلة أم لا؟ صلى مثلا كان عليه أن يؤخر يترك الجمعة لأنه يتيقن من وجود الماء لصلاة الظهر. ما زال يعني في وقت الظهر ولكن
أقوى ظاهر المذهب لأن فسد منهي عنه وهي صلاة منهي عنها.
So if a person was supposed to leave Jum'ah because he knows he can find water later and he went ahead and prayed Jum'ah, that Jum'ah is invalid for him and he has to pray Dhuhr later. فرائض التيمم فروضه مسحك وجها واليدين للكوع والنية أولو الضربتين ثم الموالاة صعيد طهرا ووصلها به ووقت حضرا آخره للراجئ هيس فقط أوله والمتردد الوسط.
نعم. فروضه مسحك وجها. فرائض التيمم مسح الوجه وحده كما قدمنا في الوضوء. واليدين للكوع والنية ابتداء فينوي استباحة ما يتيمم له على ما تقدم. أولى الضربتين يعني الضربة الأولى هذه واجبة أما الثانية فهي سنة على ما سيأتي. ثم الموالاة يعني متابعة أعضاء التيمم بأن يمسح الوجه ويتبعه باليدين بسرعة من غير فاصل طويل. صعيد طهر أبدا من تراب أو حجر طاهر ووصلها به ووصل الصلاة بالتيمم فلو فصل فصلا طويلا بطل التيمم ووقت حضر فلا بد أن يكون الوقت دخل فلو تيمم قبل دخول الوقت ولو بلحظة بطل التيمم.
The obligations of tayammum, fara'id al-tayammum. The obligations of tayammum are to wipe your face and both hands up to and including the wrist, and to make an intention at the first patting of the earth. So you wipe your face, and that face is the same definition as he mentioned in the section of wudu, and then both hands up to and including the wrist. That's what is obligatory. And then also to make an intention at the first patting of the earth. So at the first contact of the earth, you make the intention that this tayammum is that you're going to make the prayer permissible from the state that you're in. So if a person is in the lesser ritual impurity, hadith asghar, he realizes that he's trying to make the prayer permissible because he's in this state. And if he's in hadith akbar, the greater ritual impurity, which would normally require a ghusl, but he cannot find water or it would harm him, then he makes the intention to make the prayer permissible because of this state. And the reason he's stating it in that way, because tayammum does not remove the hadith. It does not remove the ritual impurity. So he can't make the intention like in wudu, that I want to remove the hadith. So he has to make the intention, I want to make the prayer permissible from the state that I'm in. Yeah. To do wudu, you mean? No, you would do ghusl. You would do tayammum. Yeah. Then also, so the intention at the first patting, also including continuity of the action, meaning that we said the two obligations are the face and the hands, so you cannot have a separation between them. A person can't do the face right now and 5 minutes later do the hands. They have to be immediately connected to each other. That the earth is pure, and there's a footnote there, and I'm sure the footnotes aren't here in this text, that would define what all a person can use as far as pure earth. Al-Akhdari goes into that. Following the tayammum immediately with the prayer. So not only do the obligations of the tayammum have to be linked together, but the entire tayammum also has to be linked to the prayer. So you do the tayammum, and then immediately afterwards you go into the prayer. So you can't do the tayammum and then half an hour later pray that prayer. And the prayer time having entered. Also, the time of that prayer has to have entered. So say, for example, it's Maghrib time, 5 minutes before or 2 minutes before Maghrib enters, you do tayammum, and you immediately link it to the prayer, but you've done it before the time the prayer time has entered. So the prayer time has to enter, you do tayammum, and then you immediately connect it to the prayer. Oh, this is talking about just that prayer's time. Right. So you can wait just like if it's if the imam's praying in a masjid, you just wait until he does about the time he does iqamah, or even a little bit before. But iqamah is good. Once he's doing iqamah, then you do your tayammum and then and join the prayer. Yes. That would be enough time. Yeah, you step outside of the masjid while he's you would want to do that before he does iqamah. So you'd step out of the masjid before he does iqamah, do your tayammum, and then enter if there's nothing. Or you have a rock inside the masjid that you do tayammum on. There's a question from the sister side.
Yeah, if you're in the mosque at the prayer hall, and the imam says the iqamah, and you're not in wudu, can you leave to do wudu, or what should you
Yes, you would have to leave to do wudu. So only once the iqamah is given, you either have wudu or you don't have wudu. If you don't have wudu, you leave and you do it, and then you can come back. Or if you do have wudu, that's when you cannot leave. You have to pray. وجاز آخره للراجي آيس فقط أوله هو المتردد الوسط.
هذا تقسيم مندوب. آخره للراجي آيس، إنسان يرجو أن يظن أنه يرى الماء آخر الوقت بحيث يتوضأ ويصلي قبل أن يخرج الوقت المختار. هذا مندوب له أن يؤخر إلى آخر الوقت، فإذا وجده اتضح الأمر، وإذا لم يجده يتيمم. آيس فقط أوله، إذا كان ييأس من وجود الماء فالمندوب له أن يصلي في أول الوقت إلى داعية للتأخير. والمتردد الوسط، المتردد في لحوقه أو وجوده وسطه. إنسان جاهل يعني محتمل الأمرين، ما يعرف هل يلحق الماء ويمشي إلى مدينة أمامه، ما يعرف هل هو يأتيها قبل أن يخرج الوقت ويأتيها بعد ذلك، هل يترك إلى أن يكون وسط الوقت ويصلي. كذلك متردد في وجود الماء، ما يعرف هل يأتيه الماء قبل خروج الوقت أم لا، يترك حتى يكون في وسط الوقت فيصلي ندبه.
So this hukum is this third line, the last line on page 121 is recommended to follow these rules. Waiting for it's kind of misleading because it's in the section of the obligations of tayammum, but this hukum is recommended. Waiting for the end of prayer time is for the one who hopes to find water. If one despairs of finding water before the time expires, then he should perform the prayer at the beginning of the time. Whoever wavers between the two should wait until the middle time. So now if the prayer time enters and he's doing tayammum because he does not have water, because of an absence of water, or because, say, for example, there's some sort of harm in the way between him and the water. There's animals or there's robbers or something. So if once the time enters, he either knows that he's not going to have access to the water the entire time, or he thinks that he's going to get water towards the end of time, or he doesn't know. He says, you know what, I may or may not get water. So either one of those three. Either he knows he's not going to find water, he knows he's going to get water if he delays a little bit, or he's unsure. So for waiting for the end of the prayer time is for the one who hopes to find water. So it's recommended if one hopes that they will find water to delay tayammum and then wait for the water to come to be able to do wudu and pray that prayer. If one despairs of finding water before the time expires, then he should go ahead and perform the prayer right at the beginning of the time. Whoever wavers between the two, meaning he doesn't know, should wait until the middle time. So he should just wait until the middle time of the prayer. If he finds water, then he does wudu and prays. If he does not, then he goes ahead and does tayammum. Now this hukum to follow this is recommended. If a person, say the prayer time were to come in and he knows an hour later or 2 hours later before the time expires he's going to find water, it's recommended for him to delay the prayer. But if he goes ahead and prays tayammum, the prayer with tayammum, it's a valid prayer. As a particular situation, specific to Jumu'ah. What's that? Naam. It's also when we say that there's no water, that means what he has to do is if there's water that can be bought, he has to buy it. If he can borrow water and says, look, lend me a gallon of water, I'll give you a gallon back. Or if he has to buy it on credit, He has to incur a debt to buy this water. He has to do those things. If there's water within about a 1.2 mile radius of him, 2 kilometers, he has to go out to find that water. So when we say absence of water, it doesn't mean just right now he doesn't have any water around him. He has to go out and look for water.
What if you know that you can find water, so you would rather delay the tayammum, so you could make wudu with water, but by delaying the tayammum and waiting to make wudu with water, you're going to miss the prayer in congregation.
Right. So and that's a common question. If a person they don't have wudu and they know to get wudu they're going to miss the jama'ah, do they do tayammum and pray with the jama'ah, or do they delay and pray with wudu by themselves? And the answer is they pray wudu by themselves. Sunan al-Tayammum. سننه مسحهما للمرفق وضربة اليدين ترتيب بقي مندوبه تسمية وصف حميد ناقضه مثل الوضوء ويزيد وجود ماء قبل أن صلى وإن بعد يجد يعد بوقت إن يكن كخائف اللصي وراج قدما وزمن مناولا قد عدما.
سننه مسحهما للمرفق. سنن التيمم مسح اليدين إلى المرفقين، يعني إكمال المسح إلى المرفقين. وضربة اليدين ترتيب باقي، كذلك الضربة الثانية هذه السنة، ترتيب بين الوجه واليدين بأن يقدم الوجه ويؤخر اليدين. مندوبه تسمية، مندوب التيمم أن يسمي الله تعالى ابتداء. وصف حميد وهو أن يبدأ من مقدم العضو وبظاهر اليد إلى المرفق وبعد ذلك يلوي طالعا ويمسح إلى أن ينتهي إلى رؤوس الأصابع. هذا هو الوصف الحميد. أما التخليل فهو واجب.
The sunan of tayammum are wiping up to and including the elbows. So from the tips of the fingers up to and including the wrists is wajib. From the wrists up to and including the elbows, that would be considered sunnah to do. Patting the earth with both hands a second time and following the sequential order. Right. I'll mention that in the next line. The patting the earth with both hands, also a second patting of the earth is also a sunnah. So if a person pats the earth one time, he can wipe his face and wipe his hands with that one patting, and that would be sufficient. But it's sunnah for him to pat the earth one time for wiping the face, and then a second time for wiping the hands. I think so, yeah. وضربة اليدين.
يعني الضربة الثانية.
نعم. So patting the earth a second time. It should say, instead of patting the earth with both hands, it should say patting the earth a second time for the hands. No, the hands. The obligatory part is the hands up to the elbows, up to the wrists, and then from the wrist to the elbows is sunnah. So the way that should read is patting the earth a second time for the hands.
Is it wajib to pat the earth with both hands?
إذا واحد مثلا ضرب الأرض بيد واحد ومسح الثاني ومسح الوجه يكفي.
لا.
No, yes, it's an obligation to
إذا
pat.
مسح بيده الواحدة لا يكفيه ولو بإصبع واحد.
كأنه يمسح يده.
نعم، وأخذ بيده الواحدة
ويمسح يده.
هذا مسح يده على يده ما وضعها على الأرض.
No. So for when it said in the previous section the obligation of tayammum, well, it doesn't clearly state it, but the placing both hands on the earth, whether it's earth or stone, whatever it is that you're making tayammum on, you have to have contact of both palms with the earth. So you can't just have one palm on the earth, and then wipe your other hand with it. You could wipe your face with one hand, but as for your hands, you have to place them both on the earth. And then following the sequential order, just like in the wudu, the order that was mentioned in the Quran, your face, then your arms, then your head, then your feet, to follow that order as sunnah. The same in tayammum, the order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, wipe your face, then your hands. That's sunnah to do that. Mandubuhu tasmiyatun wasfun hamidna. Its recommended acts are saying Bismillah. So at the beginning of the wudu, to say Bismillah of the tayammum is recommended. And emeritus quality is also recommended. And emeritus quality, what it means is so he mentioned what's sunnah and what's wajib to wipe, but there's a specific way to wipe the arms, and that's called emeritus quality, wasfun hamid. And it's that you take, after patting the hands on the ground, and for the sisters, Muna or Fedwa can show the sisters. You pat the ground, and then you take the bottom of your left hand, the bottom of your left hand, put it on the tips of your right hand, and then go down all the way to the elbow, come around, and now you're going on the bottom of your forearm all the way up to the tips of the fingers. Then you take the palm of the right hand to the tips of the left hand on the back of the fingers. You go all the way down to the elbow, turn around. Now you're coming on the forearm, the bottom of the forearm, up to the tips of the fingers. And now then you wipe in between the fingers using the bottom of your hands. So you can't just interlace your fingers like in wudu. You have to actually have the palm of the left hand touch the insides of the fingers of the right hand, and then and the palm of the right hand touch the inside fingers of the left hand. And the reason for this is because you have to have earth touch something that touched the earth touch the inside of the fingers. And if you just kind of interlace your fingers, the insides of the fingers are touching each other, and the insides of the fingers did not touch the ground. So you have to have something that touched the ground, touch the inside of the fingers. You would do your right hand first, and then your left hand. يخلي مثلا يبدأ بالخنصر أو يبدأ بالإبهام.
أظنهم قالوا إن الأفضل يبدأ هكذا.
You start with the right finger, so the pinky finger, the khinsar, then the binsar, then the musta, then the sababa, then the ibham. وفي اليسرى يبدأ بالإبهام.
هكذا.
Yes, and then from the left hand you start with the thumb.
لكن الحمد لله ما تحصل كراهة ولا شيء.
Yeah, but by not doing that, that's like a very particular recommendation, or the best way. If a person does not do that particular fashion, there's no dislikeness about it. There's no karaha. وإذا واحد خلل الأصابع هكذا في الماضي هل يجب قضاء؟
ما يعني في خلاف مشهور في المذهب ابن أبي زيد وجماعة معه قالوا لا يجوز.
So because there's a valid difference of opinion within the Maliki madhab, some said that it's not obligatory to wipe the inside of the fingers in that fashion. You don't have to wipe the inside. The other opinion, and it's a strong opinion within the Maliki madhab, says you do not have to wipe the insides of the fingers. So because there's that valid opinion, if a person had prayed in the past with a tayammum after having not properly wiping in between the fingers, they do not have to make up those prayers because it's a valid opinion.
In Al-Akhdari, it says start with the inside of the forearm.
No, it doesn't. It starts with the tips.
ناقضه مثل الوضوء ويزيد.
نعم.
وجد مع قول كذلك ناقضات التيمم مثل الوضوء. كل ما ينقض الوضوء ينقض التيمم ويزيد التيمم بوجود ماء قبل أن صلى. إنسان قادر على الماء ولكنه كان فاقدا له، فعندما تيمم وقام يريد الصلاة ولم يضيق الوقت وجد الماء انتقض تيممه. وإن بعد يجد يعيد بوقت أن يكون إذا كان بعد أن صلى وجد الماء، هذا يعيده الوقت إذا كان الماء الذي كان يرتقب. أما إذا كان ماء آخر غير مقدر لا يعيده الوقت. إن يكن معناه إن يكن الماء الذي كان يقدر كخائف للص. كذلك شخص كان خائفا من لص أو سبع عند ماء وبعد ذلك تخلف ظنه بعد أن صلى وجد الأمر ليس واقعا كان متخيلا لأمره فلم يجده يعيده في الوقت. وراش قدم كذلك راش للماء قدم أو متردد قدم يعيد في الوقت، متردد أو راش قدم يعيد في الوقت ندبا. وزمين مناولا قد علم كذلك إنسان لا يقدر على أن يأخذ الماء لمرض لا يضر به الماء لكنه ما يمكن أن يمشي يأخذ ماء مثلا وعدم مناولا وذلك وجد مناولا في الوقت مندوب له أن يعيد فيه.
It is nullified, meaning the tayammum is nullified by that which nullifies wudu. So all those things that he mentioned in the section of wudu that nullifies it, they also nullify the tayammum. But add to them with the addition of the availability of purifying water before one prays. So if a person did tayammum, and before he goes into the prayer, somebody says, here's some water, now his tayammum is invalid. But if he's already gone into the prayer, and somebody comes in and says, oh, here's some water, and he's already in the prayer, his prayer is still valid. If, however, he finds water after praying, after beginning the prayer, or after completing the prayer, then if it was still the prayer time, he should repeat the prayer if he falls into the following categories. So if he had prayed with tayammum and then after praying he finds water, it's recommended for him to repeat the prayer if the water that he found was water that he thought he would find. Meaning that we said earlier that if a person thinks that, later in the prayer time they're going to find water, but it's valid for them to go ahead and pray right away. Say he went ahead and prayed right away, and then that water that he thought would come actually came. So for him it would be recommended to repeat the prayer. Whereas if a person thought that water would come, he prayed with tayammum, and then afterwards somebody brought water, but it was water that he wasn't even considering, then for him it's not recommended to repeat the prayer. For instance, also someone fearful of a bandit or someone hopeful of finding water who nevertheless proceeds to pray during the first time, even though he is expected to wait until the last time. So someone fearful of a bandit, near the water, near the place, the access to water, there was bandits or wild animals, and that's why he didn't do water. Once that harm is removed, he has access to the water, it's recommended for him to repeat the prayer. Oh, yeah, that's a different situation. If he's in the prayer and there's water, like say he had water in his car, and he was looking around for water, he forgot that he had water in his car, he goes into the prayer, and now he remembers that he had water in his car, that would invalidate his prayer. صحيح. إذا واحد مثلا تيمم دخل التيمم وتذكر أنه عنده ماء هذا يبطل الصلاة.
يبطل
الصلاة.
كيف؟
إنه هو مثلا ظن إنه ما عنده ماء، عدم وجود الماء. ونسي أنه عنده ماء.
لا فيها إلا نسي نص خليل. إذا كان ناسي.
So if he in that situation his prayer would be invalid, and if during the prayer he remembered water that he had. Also, the one who nevertheless proceeds to pray during the first time, even though he's expected to wait until the last time. So somebody, again, that was expected to wait until the last time of the prayer because he knew that water would come, and he prayed it the first time, it's recommended for him to repeat the prayer. Or a chronically ill person who lacks an assistant to fetch water for him. So an ill person that he's able to do wudu, water, but he's not able to move for whatever reason. So he usually has somebody bring him water. And during the time of the prayer, that person was not there, so he went ahead and he prayed tayammum. Later on, his assistant comes, or his helper, his servant comes, and now that person can now bring him water. So it's recommended for him to do wudu and repeat the prayer.